Hey everybody, welcome to the Master Passive Income Show. My name is Dustin Heiner, and I'm here to help you quit that JOB, that just overbooked job, by investing in real estate so you never ever have to work a job again. Today, I'm super pumped to have a fantastic real estate investor who is really crushing it in the midterm space where it's renting 30, 60, 90 days. And on top of that, also helping lots of other people to do it. I personally have the midterm property, and I've listened to this guy share lots of tips and ways to really maximize your midterm property. Works out so very, very well. I love it. Jesse Vasquez, thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Dustin, thanks for having me, man. I'm super excited and glad to meet your fans out there, and it's cool to connect with you and talk about midterm rentals because they are definitely up and coming, and it's they're not passive. We'll put it that way, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But uh, yeah, it's glad
Yeah,
to be. I'm
I
glad to be here.
Yeah, totally. The midterm space is it's relatively new. I mean, it's been around for a little bit, but like it's starting to take off in general. People are more knowing about it. But you've also been doing it for quite a while, which is great. And you and I met at your conference, the Midterm
Yeah.
Rental Summit, which I went to the conference. I was like, I want to learn more about midterm rental. I want to be around people, and so the conference was awesome. So everybody definitely needs to come check that one out. And then at the same time, you're also from, and I found this out, that you're also from the same central area, Central Valley in California. You're from
Yeah.
Turlock, I'm from Fresno. And so it's just fun learning another real estate investor who has a conference, who's from the Central Valley, who's helping people to invest in real estate. This is great. Now, I mean, I know a lot of people have great stories about how they got invested in real estate, but how did you actually think, I want to do a midterm property? Because I'll be completely honest, in 2006, when I first started investing, there weren't Airbnbs, there weren't VRBO, there weren't these things that you can actually go and just hire a property manager. You had to do it yourself or figure it
Mhm.
out. I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to just do long term. It's so much easier. But then now we have so like it's ingrained into property management. People know about it. What made you like? How long ago did you just get started? What made you get into the midterm?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I worked in healthcare for 17 years as a business development manager, which is a fancy way, Dustin, of saying sales rep. So my job was to go, I worked for a home health and hospice agency, and I would go into these different hospitals. I was a sales manager. So I covered from San Francisco all the way to Los Angeles. And one day I was in Modesto, California, which you know, it's in Central Valley. And I was in a doctor's hospital. And if you've ever been there before, it's a super dimly lit hospital. In fact, it has like that yellow hue when you're walking around, and there's a nursing station. I remember walking up to it, and I heard this woman that had this beautiful accent, and she was saying things like, and maybe you can guess this, Dustin. I'm gonna let you try to do this for him. She was saying things like, "Don't you know?" and "Isn't he a doll?" And I was just like instantly drawn. Do you know where that's from? Do you have any
Sounds like
idea where that
Canada.
Canada, Fargo, North Dakota?
North Dakota.
And
Okay, really close
yeah,
there. You got it.
I gotta go, don't you know? Watch out for deer. Yeah. So basically, I went up to her and I was just like, what are you doing here? Like, you're in California, like, your accent is awesome because everybody says dude and bro and man, just like you're from Fresno, you know that, right? And
Yep.
she said her name was Barbara. She was a travel nurse. And she said, I asked her where she was staying, and she laughed and looked at me and said, I'm staying on Ninth Street. And if you're familiar with Modesto at all, Ninth Street's like one of the worst areas, and she was staying at a Motel 6. I started laughing because I thought she was joking. Then I asked her how much she was paying, and she said she was paying $3,000 a month. And keep in mind, Dustin, this was back in 2015
Oh my
when
goodness.
yeah,
I
when you
know
could buy a
Modesto. Oh
property.
my goodness, three thousand
Yeah,
dollars a month.
exactly. It's like it's a rough area, drug infested, prostitutes. Like, it's a place that you don't want to be. And that's where this healthcare worker who was working 12-hour shifts was staying. And it just blew my mind. And she was paying 3 grand, which I didn't know Motel Sixes even charged that much. So back in 2015, you could buy a property in Central California for 250,000. If you remember that, Dustin. Maybe even less than that. Your mortgage payment would be like $1,300. So in my brain, I'm like, holy crap, I've actually seen a bunch of Barbaras from San Francisco to Los Angeles to Fresno to all these different hospitals that I've been throughout the entire coast of California. And I just started to look at it from a different lens. And I asked her, I said, Barb, how do I actually like get to work with somebody like you? How do I get you to stay in one of my properties or in a property? Because I didn't have anything at that time. And she said, go down in the HR department and talk to one of the HR representatives in there and see if you can get a contract with them. And Dustin, if you've ever been in a hospital, you have to have a badge to get in. All the nurses have a
Yep.
badge. I sat there, dude, in this hallway that was super yellow, dimly lit. I felt like a horror movie. And I waited for a nurse to go into the HR department. And I want everybody listening right now to picture this because what I'm going to tell you guys right now completely changed my life. In fact, I wouldn't even be here talking to you guys if this didn't happen. And most people won't do this. I wasn't invited to go into that room, Dustin. I wasn't supposed to go in there. You had to have a badge to get in. And this door was the kind of doors that like they swing open and then all of a sudden close real slow so that people don't hear it, right? Have you ever seen those doors? And the door was shutting in my mind. I'm like, should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? Something just happened where I just took off and I put my size 11 shoe in right before the door closed. And I opened it up and there was this lady sitting right in front of the door. Her name was Misty, had this big giant sign on her desk. And I said, Misty, I just talked to Barbara on telemetry floor 3 on the South Tower. She asked me to come talk to you. She's staying at Motel 6. Did you know that that's where travel nurses are staying? And she was like, what are you doing in this office? And then secondary, we started actually talking about it. And she said that she's been looking for people that have property in the Modesto market for years, never was able to catch anybody. But what I want everybody to take away from that is that I didn't have a property yet. I saw an opportunity, and hopefully after this call today, you guys are able to look at real estate in a different way because I didn't even have a home, but I got a contract before I got the property. So after that, we can talk about how I ended up picking the property later. I had a couple, 15,000 saved up, but that right there, that moment is what defined where I'm at and I'm able to have this conferences and talk to you and all these things. That was it, man. If I didn't do that, I wouldn't be here.
That is a terrific story. I mean, you found the I guess market, the people that want to buy before you even had the product, which because you knew they would buy. They're already staying in a Motel 6. And if anybody knows what a Motel 6 is, I mean, those are pretty rough. And usually they're in
Yeah.
rough areas. You don't want to be around there. And in Fresno, there's a street called G Street. You don't want to be on G
Yeah.
Street. This Ninth Street is very
Same
similar.
thing.
It's but
Yeah.
$3,000 a month, and then you already have a ready, steady tenant supply, and that is awesome. And then getting the property. Now, one thing I want to switch to, or like that my mind's starting to realize, is that from COVID, the traveling nurses had a lot of money. It seemed like they had a
They
higher
did.
dollar amount, higher stipend or whatever it's called, to be able
Yes.
to stay. But now it's gone down lower. And so I'm seeing a lot of people on Furnished Finder, a lot of nurses and traveling executives too, on Furnished Finder saying, hey, I only have $1,400 a month. And so
Yep.
what I'm seeing now, and it's still midterm, but renting out by the room
Right.
instead of the entire place, $3,000 for the place instead of $3,500, $3,000, you're doing $1,400 per room. Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of renting by the room. To me, it was like I was able to get a contract with the hospital. And that's where it changed for me is that the hospital is actually paying for these travel nurses to come. This is in 2015. Things have changed since then. So I got a contract with Doctors Hospital for 2 years. They were paying $4,000 for a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and they would put the nurses in there. So I didn't have to do anything about like, this is why I don't like renting by the room. Each room is like managing its own property. You have to have a new nurse coming in. You have 3 different calendars you're working with. And if you have 4 properties like that, 4 times 3, I mean, that's 24 different rooms you're moving around. And that's just a lot of work. The scalability on that becomes super difficult unless you have somebody on your team that's able to do that. So for me, I'm like, how do I get paid? How do I get paid up front? How can I have the agency actually be on the lease, be the leasee? So I'm not having to worry about the clients that are coming through because that's what they ended up doing. And for my W-2 job, my job, Dustin, was to go in to create relationships with these customers that were nurses that were basically, if you fell and broke your hip, which hopefully that never happens, and it's not going to happen to you because I see you work out and this guy's a beast. If you guys haven't watched any of his videos yet, um, like you're not going to bust your hip, but if you did, the company would call me, the hospital would say, hey, Jess, can you get some nurses to come see this patient? They're going to be going home. So I was already building relationships on a B2B level for years already. So it came super natural to me to be able to think about, okay, here's the opportunity. I just got to create a relationship here. We get a contract. Everything in healthcare is contract based already anyway. So that's how the ball started to roll with me is that exact way right there. And again,
So,
it's
and
landscape's changed for sure.
but I do like the idea of not renting out per room because, like you said, with all the different nuances of people coming and going, are you still finding right now, like literally right now, end of 2024, end of 2025, that you can get contracts with, let's say, hotel or hospitals, or get actual contracts where the entity, the hospital, is the one on the lease and they just put people
Yep.
inside there, I guess?
Yeah, there's a company called CHG Healthcare. They're basically like, if anybody's ever looked at this, it's called AMN Healthcare. They're the biggest, largest. They have Kaiser contracts, all these other places. CHG Healthcare does more of the personalized, small, like physical therapists, occupational therapists, more of the, physicians that have a specialty or, like in hospice or something like that. They're actually paying for these folks to go stay in these properties. And what they want is quality individual operators that aren't like, slinging crap properties on Airbnb. So they're looking for, people that are specific, that are building this way. So the healthcare industry's changed a lot. You do have a lot of one-off nurses that get per diem pay, and that's tax-free. They want to keep as much of that in their pocket as they possibly can. In fact, Dustin, if you and I were traveling nurses, we would do the exact same thing. We'd be like, we want the
Absolutely.
cheapest room, the cheapest rate. I don't care who's there. Like, I just want to be able to crash and pay less than $1,000 because that's tax-free money that I'm able to keep. So that kind of shift it started happening in 2022 when COVID, like those nurses were making bank back in that time. Because obviously there was enough clinicians to meet the demand for patients all over the US, right, with everything going on. And yeah, now it's changed. Now nurses, it's back to that, kind of back to what it was before. But this is again where you get creative. Nurses aren't not just the only type of client that I go after. We have corporate entities where we have corporate companies that are actually working with us. I work with a lot of insurance relocation companies. So every 88 seconds in the US, Dustin, somebody loses their home due to a fire or flood or the catastrophic events that we're seeing with this crazy weather that's happening all across the world. And everybody that loses their home they're displaced and they have to be put in another property. And these insurance companies will pay 3 to 5x long-term rental rates to get a landlord to pay to live, to have to release their property out for 3 or 4 months to this family that's getting their place constructed. And that right there has been one of the best strategies that I found in real estate today, but it takes time, it takes energy, and you have to be able to build relationships. But I mean, we're getting 8, 9, 10, $12,000 a month bookings by connecting with these companies. And you might have somebody that stays with you for 3 months, but I mean, I'm able to get my mortgage paid for the entire year in like a 2 month stay. And that's pretty freaking awesome because everything afterwards is just icing on the cake.
So this company or these companies that have other people, not just nurses, um, are they hard to really get into? I mean, it's obviously you have students, there are other people that are doing just in general, like just property managers trying to get tenants and stuff. Do they have like a glut of people trying to get them to work with them, or is it going to be somewhat easier to actually still break into that game?
I think it's still easy, man. The thing with it is that, and this is what I've always done, is that I've always used LinkedIn, and I'm giving my strategies away right here for free, but it's cool. I want you guys to hear this because this is how I actually built this. If everybody goes into, there's a company called ALE Solutions. They're the largest database company that has all these properties all over the US. People put their properties in there and then they will actually go search. If you have farmers insurance, Dustin, you lose your home. Farmers is like, ALE, go find a property for this family to go live. So if you go on LinkedIn, you just type in ALE Solutions and relocation specialist, you'll see hundreds and hundreds of these specialists that work there. Guess what? I'm going to send a note and say, hey, I'm Dustin. I have property in Nashville and Arizona. And I'm not just here to talk about my properties, but I'm here to actually help you find housing for anybody that's in whatever markets. I have a database of I have 600 students in mine. You probably have a few thousand in yours. So essentially, you have thousands of homes that are available for these companies. And now I'm starting to build this relationship with these companies this way. So it's not about getting my house booked. It's about how can I actually help and support these companies that are trying to find housing throughout the US. And all they have to do is say, I need a place in Nashville. Guess what? Dustin's there. Dustin's got a bunch of people out there. So now I'm just connecting and making these referrals. And all of a sudden now they're going to use me when they have a property in Fresno or Modesto or California. But it's not necessarily going to be my first property. I'm going to be helping them find something somewhere else. And I think that's where most people get stuck is that they're looking at what I'm doing and they're calling these companies and saying, hey, my place in Modesto is a 3-2 and it's only 6,000 a month. And they're talking about their own property. Like these relocation specialists don't give a crap about your property. They want to be able to find, somebody that's able to tap them into the network that they have that can help reduce what they're actually doing because they have tons of stuff on their desk. So I think, again, the people that are able to create the most out of anything are able to find a problem, put a solution together, and then start to work around that and not think about their specific mortgage. You're thinking about how can I actually solve the problems of these folks that are actually working with me. And that's right there how to build a business. And most people do it totally backwards. In fact, I did for years. And it's just part of the game.
Well, I love that idea too. And especially obviously in my scenario and yours, like we have lots and lots of people that we've worked with that have properties. I have lots of students who they buy a property and get long term and they're thinking, you know what, I might want to do short term. I'm like, well, have you looked at midterm? Short term is it's short term, short term. Maybe it could be
Yeah.
rough, it could be good too, but I'm definitely much more so in the midterm or long term camp. But having a bunch of other properties, because if you talk to the person has lots of different markets that they have to take care of, not just one property. Well, what if they find one person for that specific property? Then it might work out. But if you have a network, if you have other people around you, or if you just knew other investors, like if you approach in that light saying, I want to help you solve your problem. And that's like, it's 101 of, if you read the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's like,
Yeah.
how do you solve their problem? How do you get them what they want? And if you're talking to them, trying to get them to work with you, figure out what they want and get that for them. And then they're going to want to work with you as opposed to, what do I need? What do I need? And what do I need?
Yeah, yeah, and that's the problem that I hear. People message me all the time on Instagram or wherever and just be like, "Hey, I've been trying to do this and I'm asking about my property." I'm like, "That's your problem. You got to like get rid of your property and like how can I actually solve a problem? It's going to be some random property out in the middle of Iowa somewhere, but you can still make this is the crazy thing, and I think this is going to be the 2.0 of wholesaling. So essentially, what happens right now, Dustin, is that I can get a referral for, let's just use Nashville right now, a booking for 3,000 or let's say $6,000 for a family of four. They need a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. It's same and similar to their home. They're in whatever zip code, and I'm able to connect with you and say they're going to spend 6K right on that space. I'd reach out to you and say, hey, Dustin, I got a 6-month booking for $6,000 a month. That's 36,000. I'm actually, if you're willing to take that, I'd give you that referral. I'm going to maintain the relationship. All you're going to do is sign the lease. I'm going to be working with the company myself, but I'm going to ask for 10% of the income that comes through over the next 36. So I'm going to make $3,600 by giving you a referral. So essentially, I have the lead, I have everything already put together, and I'm just sending it to you. The family's going to go walk your home. They're going to say, yes, I love it. You're putting the lease together. I'm sending you the $6,000 a month or whatever it is, 5,000, and you got your place booked. You're happy. You got 6 months of somebody staying there. They're a family. They're not going to jack it up. You have somebody coming in monthly, and I make money. I take care of my, relocation specialist. You're happy because you got your place booked for 5K a month, which is amazing because you would have normally only got 3,200 or whatever. And your place is booked and I'm taking care of the client. So it's like, this is what's happening right now in this internal world that not a lot of people know about, but this is like, there's people that are wholesaling these deals all the time. In fact, I just got one from one of my students, $50,000 for a 6-month booking. And she just gave me the referral just like that. It was like, here, I got a referral for you in Modesto. And family came and looked at it, 50K. I didn't do anything other than talk about what we're doing. And she got the referral. She's taking care of the client. I'm taking care of the family. And she's making her cash and, I'm making the cash too. So it's like, it's a win-win scenario. We're not competing with each other. And I think that right there is where, most real estate, so it's really competitive, especially the short-term space, right? Everybody's like, I got the nicest pictures. I got the treehouse. I got 30 pickleball courts in my backyard and 10 cold plunges. And with the midterm space, you just have to have a comfortable place in a central location that isn't overly themed, that is put together in a way that is not like short-term rentals. And I think that's why there's so many people that are appealing to that now, because short-term rentals, you have to have an experience. People got to go and they got to feel something when they're there. Midterm is like, people are living there. They need to feel like they're at home. And it's a totally different context. You're not staying for 2 days. You're staying for months.
I think those are brilliant ideas. How has your experience been with using Airbnb to find midterm? I have one of my students he absolutely loves his midterm property and he puts it on Airbnb. It does a
Mhm.
great job. And that's all like anybody from Furnish Finder that
Mhm.
contacts him, he pushes them over to Airbnb because it's so much easier on him. He doesn't have to worry about a lease, doesn't have to worry about anything. It's just like they check out and then they go in. But yeah, what's been your experience with Airbnb?
Yeah, Airbnb is a great lead generator. And what I mean by that is this is where most people screw up and when they're putting midterm rentals together. They'll list only on Airbnb and they'll have like, I remember when I first got my first insurance booking in 2016. So real quick, Dustin, I'm gonna give you a quick story to this. So I got this amazing booking. It was like $6,500 a month for 3 months. This company came in, they said, hey, we're actually looking for a house for a family. We want to rent this place for 3 months. They're paying the entire amount, including all the fees. And I was like, oh, awesome. They told me that they were a relocation company. I got this awesome booking. It ended up extending, being 6 months. So they paid 6,000 whatever change for 6 months. Big ass booking. I didn't ask questions. I didn't ask like, what company are you with? How can I work with you more often? So I think you're going to get these bookings that come from Airbnb. But if you don't put leases together, you're not protecting yourself. Airbnb doesn't give a crap about you. And I think people need to realize that they're not going to show up at your house and kick people out. You're going to have to do that. You got to deal with all those things. Airbnb says they have $1 million, coverage policy. They cover what they want. It depends on the rep you get. So I wouldn't put any faith in that company at all as far as getting paid on a certain way or kicking squatters out. But it is a good place because there's so many people know it. It's a common name that you can get your property booked in a regular way by just listing on these platforms. But I think this is where if you're listing that way and you're doing well and it just becomes saturated, which it will, I think the midterm market is going to continue to grow. In fact, Blackstone, they just purchased a bunch of extended stay. They actually bought extended stay hotel, which is that's who your real competitor is in the 30-day model. So Blackstone's getting involved in midterm rentals. And when they start getting involved in this typically institutional money does that 3 to 5 years before the general public starts to feel it. So they got into it in 2022. So I think 2025 is really going to be the year that more regulations are going to hit, which push in the short term side, which push people to midterm rentals, and more people are knowing about it. So it's like if you're just on Airbnb, now you're competing with 30 people, but in 2025, you might be competing with 150. So, now it's going to be a race to the bottom who's got the lowest prices. And this is why I believe if you connect with companies and you start to build actual relationships, you're going to have a Rolodex that comes through. And the best thing about what I do is that I'm actually building a business, Dustin, on this side, which is the relationships that I'm building that send me referrals. Then I have the tangible, real estate that's I can touch. That's the two things are together. And I feel like most people that get into real estate, it's been the same forever. You buy real estate, you get a property manager, you sit back, you collect a couple mailbox money here and there. But this is actually like you're building a business. And I think there's a new type of entrepreneur that's coming into real estate, and they have that entrepreneurial mindset where they're trying to build businesses and they're creating kind of a moat to their actual real estate. So they're combining those two things together. I think those are the people that are going to be around in 5 or 10 years where they're actually thinking like a business. Not that real estate investors aren't, but it's been the same for the longest time. And you're just starting to see this new version of an entrepreneur that's getting into real estate. I think that's really what I'm excited about.
I think that's a great idea too. And then if you're solely focused on Airbnb, what if you get three bad reviews or one bad review, and then all of a sudden you just drop off? And that's why I don't like having all my eggs in one basket. Absolutely. I want to make sure I'm spread out but I mean, even just like
Yeah.
having a podcast to having YouTube channel to having Instagram to, having all these different ways. I don't like depending on one way. Now, walk me through the process because people listening, they're like, man,
Mhm.
midterm sounds great. How do I get started? But like with Airbnb, it's great. They take care of everything, all the
Yeah.
money to all that stuff. But if you
Mhm.
are going to find somebody for just 30 days, do you set up a lease that's a full
Yes.
on lease that they also pay a security deposit, a pet deposit? Like, how does that, is it just like a long term? You just condense it down?
Exactly the same, man. Except I don't say tenant. My attorney had us put guest in. We don't ever put tenant in there. So the goal is if these people are on assignment, which they're typically working class people, it's the corporate working field. They're coming in. They're only on assignment. So they're on assignment. They're guests in a property for a certain amount of time. So yeah, we're doing a lease. We're doing background checks. We want to know who's staying in our property. That protects me and the people that are actually in the property. And with Airbnb, that's what scares the hell out of me. And you see these stories all over the place. In fact, just go on Google and read about them. There's Facebook pages that talk about this too. People will book for 30 days on Airbnb and they'll say, hey, can we take this offline? Pay the same amount again, and then all of a sudden they're living in that property for the next 6 months without doing anything at all. Because people just assume that you don't need to have a lease. You need to have that's for protection. Like that's how you are protecting yourself and your asset, over time. And
What
unfortunately,
type
there's
of
just a lot.
what type of security deposit do you ask for?
Yeah, I usually ask for $2,000. It depends on the property. If it's a property like one of our higher end properties that the rent is, I have a property in Santa Cruz in Aptos, California. Mortgage on that place is like, I don't know, $4,000. I'll ask for what my mortgage is. So I'll say 4K on this property just in case. But again, keep in mind that I'm working with agencies and companies that I will try to have them be the leasee. So these are multi-million dollar companies that if they don't pay, I mean, the likelihood of them not paying is high. Is not going to happen because they're multi-million dollar companies, and you have a random contractor in your house that might be a different story. But yeah, it's just that's how I feel comfortable is that knowing that these companies are on the lease. But yeah, you gotta do everything just like long term. It's the exact same philosophy. So if you're a long term operator, you wanting to get in the mid space, it's exactly the same deal.
So let me ask you, because I love long term because I have a property manager and it becomes passive. Like I literally don't do much in my business. I know I buy more properties, I do, all this other stuff. But as far as like the day-to-day running of the property, when you talked about the new entrepreneur that's going to be running these businesses, I think it's absolutely true, 100%. I personally don't want to do any of that work. So
Yeah.
is it hard to find are there companies out there that are property managers or people that are already building that business in, let's say, well, I just think of one of my properties in Phoenix. That's currently a midterm property that I could say, hey, you have the network, you have everything. Here's my property, just like that the referral that you got. can you just run it? And you obviously you're going to make money as a property manager. You're going to do all the work. I just don't want to work. I want to as passive as possible. Is that possible?
Yes, yeah, I would probably only do that with people that have been in my class that know how to operate this stuff in the right way. I think 2025 is going to be the year of co-hosting for midterm rentals. Exactly what you're saying right now, where there's going to be a big institutional company or like an Evolve that hires somebody like me that goes in and starts getting all these contracts and does all these things and now adds that into a sector of being able to build. Yes, there's people that do that. I would make sure that they're doing it the right way, or they're actually connecting with companies that already have a Rolodex, not somebody that's just saying or they're just starting, because you might be sitting vacant for months. And that's the thing with midterm rentals is like you might have a really good 2 months or 3 months, but then all of a sudden it's a month or two before somebody books your property. So you have to be very thoughtful on who I'm going after, what type of client it is, who's actually coming to my market. And I think this is where most people get stuck. Dustin, do you mind if I jump in another story real quick about how I
Oh,
found
please do. We love stories.
this is going to be important right here for everybody to see. And this is exactly what I want you guys to think about. So I had there's a Dave and Buster's that was being built in Modesto. I don't know if you've been to Modesto, but it's probably been years. This is newer. Dave and Buster's were being built from ground up, right? It was part of the mall in Modesto, and they dropped one of these buildings and they're building it back up. I drove by that Dave and Buster's that was being built, Dustin, and in front of that building was a bunch of trucks that had Louisiana plates, and they had a company that was plastered on the side. So I took a picture like a creeper of that truck, and I got home and I called and I said, "Hey, I just saw that there's a work truck, a lot of work trucks that are over in they're built, the new Dave and Buster's being built. I know this is random, but I actually house construction workers and folks just like you. Can you tell me a little bit about your lodging situation so I could see if I can actually save you guys some money?" So she started telling me the whole thing. They had 5 engineers that were working in Modesto. They were staying at a Holiday Inn Express. Each guy had their own room, so there's 5 rooms, and they were paying 150 something dollars a night. It ended up being $200 a night per dude. So 200 times five, it's $1,000 a day times 30, and they did get a discount. So she said right around $26,000 a month is what they were spending to have 5 dudes in a Holiday Inn Express. And I was like, I have a 5 bedroom house that's literally 0.2 of a mile away from the job site. Each guy would have their own room. 3 of your favorite guys would have their own bathroom because it's a 5 bedroom, 3 bath. So you pick those 3 guys. The other 2 are gonna, have to figure something out, share a bathroom. But I'd be willing to rent that place to you guys for 10K, fully furnished, everything into it. It's got a pool in the backyard, and that's going to save you guys literally thousands of dollars every month. And she's like, I don't know why I didn't think about this before. Let me talk to the team and we'll get back to you. They went and looked at the property, ended up booking the place for 10K. It was a 3 month booking. And all I did was drive by a freaking truck of construction that was happening. And this is what I mean by that's a hustler mentality right there, right? Somebody's like taking pictures and doing, there's a lot of ways to build a business by thinking that way. I've also worked with Gallo Winery, which is a huge winery in Central California. Exact same scenario where this is different though. They were on Furnish Finder looking for housing. It was 5 people that were also looking for housing. They worked for Gallo. They were international workers from Spain. They were looking to rent by the room. I called Gallo and I said, "Hey, I just got 5 people that were sending inquiries on Furnish Finder. They all mentioned they were working for you. Do you have anybody in the department that I could talk to about housing and lodging?" We actually ended up renting one of my properties to them for 3 years, Dustin, at $5,000 a month for whether they have people in there or not. And this is what people don't get. Like Frito-Lay and all these companies that have conveyor belts and stuff like that. There's people that come from all over the world, literally, to come work on those kinds of things and put things together. They have midterm stays. You just have to find the right people and find the right contracts and find the right opportunities. And again, the very beginning of this episode, I mentioned I want you guys to think different after this conversation. This is exactly what I mean. Traditional real estate is what it's been forever. This is a new way of thinking, a new way of adapting and getting longer term bookings without the headaches that you typically get from the short-term rental space. And yes, it requires work. It requires you picking up the phone and dialing and doing all those things. But I mean, that's how you build a business. It's not supposed to be easy, right, Dustin?
Oh, no, no, definitely. Any business that you're going to start is going to be work. You're going to have to put work in it. But what I love about the model that you're creating is once you already have the contacts, it's going to take work to build up the contacts, build up the reputation that you have as somebody who has properties, not just one property, but multiple properties or other people that you could connect people with. Or you're building this out so you provide services for key people. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. When you're providing a service for somebody else, you figure out what they need and you try to deliver that. And so I love that direction. Can you give me And it's okay if you can't, but I'm trying to think of what would be a downside? What should we watch out for if we're getting into this midterm space?
Yeah, I would. Well, the thing that I learned about housing construction workers, dudes are going to walk in with their dirty ass boots and freaking kick stuff around everywhere. You're going to get beer cans in the backyard. You're going to have stuff like that. So, I think it's really important to have a cleaner that goes out either biweekly or monthly to this eyes and ears on your property to make sure it's being kept up the right way. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about being a midterm rental operator is you get to see your place during the time, right? And you have to have it up to par. So that's one of them. The other one is, a difficult thing would be it's hard to connect with these companies. Most people will give up after one or two or three or five or 10 calls. People don't like to be rejected. You need to be used to that when you're getting into this space. Like you have to be used to people saying, nope, click, not going to happen. It might be 100 calls before somebody lands that yes. But then that's when you get that yes, you build that relationship from them, and that's what can feed your business. You don't need to have, this is what's crazy to me, Dustin. I'll talk to people that have 100 doors and they're telling me like, man, they're making all kinds of cash, $15,000 or whatever a month from 15, from those doors. I'm like, man, I got 2 doors, 3 doors, and I'm like almost doing as much as you, with 100 doors. And I think that's where people get confused. Like if you put that energy and time into building something, the likelihood of you actually being intentional and really going after a company that's going to pay a lot more, 3 to 5 long-term rental rates, you're going to be able to make some cash flow on that. But again, you're going to have vacancies and it takes time, it takes energy to build. But if you're in that mindset of I'm going to build something that's worthwhile, it's going to be around in the next 10 years, you have to have that mindset of like, I'm going all in. This is what it's going to be. I'm going to get rejected hundreds of times, get used to it. That's just the way it is. And
Man,
yeah,
I love
those
it.
are the downsides.
Yeah, okay. No, I totally get it. And thinking about the downsides, one thing that I was realizing was that if you have a midterm property, if it's not going to be like a long term where it's 365 days, it's hopefully rented. That's your goal is 365 days. You might have a month or two where it's you're waiting for a next contract to come in. Talk to me about how we handle that, or is there a way that we can mitigate that where it's almost booked all the time?
Yeah. So if you're able to short-term rent in between gap days, because we have that, that's awesome. That's what we do. We also work multiple different leads at the same time. So if I'm working with a, travel nurse in one side or working with a corporate entity on the other side, working with an insurance company on the other side, we'll take whoever's going to come first. Like we're not going to wait around for people to figure stuff out. But yeah, you're going to have blocks of vacancies sometimes. We'll fill those vacancies in with short-term rentals. So midterm rent, drop some short-term rentals in there, and then we know somebody's coming, January 15th. So we're not leaving the place just kind of empty hanging out. But one of the things that I want to make sure everybody knows is I've never operated my midterm rentals 100%. Like they're always 80% occupancy, 75% occupancy. There's going to be times where you don't have that midterm occupancy and you have to be able to pivot into something else. And I think if you have the ability to operate a short-term rental and it's not, you have the ability to piggyback off both, that's the way to go, especially if you're able to take advantage of the peak season on the short-term side. And then you transition over to midterm rentals during slow season. Now your income, the smart investors, intuitive investors keep their cash flow all year long. It's like, it's staying up top with, the short-term rental space, Dustin, you'll have these peaks where it's like April, May, June, July, August, all this money, and all of a sudden crashes, September, October, November, December, January, February, March. That's when I'd be midterm renting. And I'd start doing that 3 months before that season even hits so that you're starting to build those relationships. You're building you're connecting with the right people in your market. You're really being intentional about what you're doing. And then all of a sudden you're hitting those months already booked. And I think most people just they're not, they don't want to put that time and energy in. Airbnb makes things easy. Like I can have an iPhone 13, take pictures of a house and start making money from it. What other business can you do that in? Like it's crazy, right? But this is a step further in actually creating an actual business that Brian Chesky doesn't own. You actually get to own the house on your own land. If Airbnb goes away tomorrow, or if somebody throws a party in your house, Airbnb will shut your listing down. Like that's happened to me so many times. I'm not in
Oh yeah.
control. Dustin, we just talked about that. We like to be in control of our own situations, right? Which is why Dustin moved out of California, guys, just so you guys know. And I'm sure he's told you about it already. But that's exactly why I like to do midterm. I'm in control of my own properties. I'm building my own house on my own land. I have the referrals that are able to get me in these properties. I don't have to rely on Airbnb. And it's not bad to start there, but that's what I want everybody to know, that we're just employees of Brian Chesky at the end of the day. You're just listing your property on his platform. That's it.
Man, I absolutely love it. Now, Jesse, you have a podcast that everybody needs to check out. Tell us about the podcast and how else can people reach out to you?
Yeah, the podcast is called the JV Pod. Check it out. It's on Spotify and Apple Pod and all that stuff. We talk about midterm rentals and entrepreneurship and just a lot of stuff in general. And then where you can find me most, where I'm most active, is my YouTube channel. And you should type in Jesse Vasquez. I should pop up there. And then I'm also on Instagram at the real Jesse Vasquez, because there's so many Hispanic Jesse Vasquez in the world that had to be the real one. So you can find me there.
Well, also, I mean, you look at Jesse, you look at your profile picture on Instagram, I'm like, that is a professional, awesome looking like picture. It's like Jesse got dressed up, he's wearing a suit, he's looking
Yeah,
all
man.
dapper. I was like, dang, that looks really good.
Yeah, and then you see me in real life, you're like, what the hell happened to this guy? Yeah,
Backwards
I
hat
probably,
and flannel.
I know I need to change it up. Yeah, that was my. I haven't changed that picture in years, man. But you're probably right.
Oh, I'm
I need
not
to
saying you
start.
should. I just like, dude, he's got a stellar profile picture there.
Yeah, thanks, man. Yeah, that was my glamour shots, Dustin. Those my glamour shots I had to get done.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Jesse, hey, been fantastic having you on. I know I learned a ton, and everybody else is going to be learning a ton. So everybody, check out his podcast as well. But super pumped to see everything that you're doing, and really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you, and thanks for listening.